Today's guest is Shelley McGuire. She's the owner and events curator for Shelley's Events. She's the chief strategy officer for OrangeSlices. She's a realtor in Florida and a co-owner of MSS Management, which is an accounting and wealth management company. On top of all that, Shelley is a former professor of entrepreneurship. She's a former special education teacher and a former business high school teacher. Shelley, you do a lot of different things, and I'm really excited to hear your story. So thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
So for those who don't know you, talk a bit about that. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
So originally from the west side of Baltimore, spent 44 years right outside the doors of CMS, which is kind of funny. Grew up, just a regular old girl in a public school in Randallstown. Didn't really know what to do with myself after high school. Went to college. I got had to go to a community college because my SAT scores were so low. Fun fact, they were so low I couldn't get into anywhere else. So my parents were like, well, I guess you're staying here. So I went to Catonsville. I graduated from University of Baltimore. I stayed home. I worked while I was, going to school. So I didn't get the college experience, which is probably a good thing because I went to one college party and it wasn't so great for me. So kind of know my boundaries, but yeah, I thought I wanted to be a mortuary science degree major, and come to find out I felt like I had too much personality, so I ended up going into, believe it or not, I went into HR and got my first gig in HR at Maryland Institute College of Art.
Wow.
Yeah, so I worked at a college doing HR, and that was my internship that turned into a full-time gig, and then I went and worked in the healthcare system. So I worked in the healthcare system for about 3 years in HR. Prior to that, like I always wanted to work for the government, but I didn't really get the chance because my GPA wasn't high enough. So that's why I kind of took the commercial route of healthcare versus the federal route of
Mm.
healthcare. So anyway, landed in HR, figured out that I again had too much personality. I didn't like to fire people, nor did I like to hire, but then I didn't like to be their counselor when they didn't like the job that they got. So I'm like, I need something different here. So I decided to go the teaching route. And that's kind of like where I really fell in love with teaching kids in high school. I started that journey going back to school to get the certificate so I could teach in Baltimore County. And I did that. I went in and I taught at a really nice school on the east side called Eastern Tech, and taught business classes, Microsoft classes, IT classes for a couple of years. And then I kind of saw the writing on the wall. A lot of schools were going STEM. So I felt like I had to do something. And again, I am not math and science savvy. So I decided to go the special ed route because I'm like, you know what? I help kids in high school when I was in high school with special ed, and I was a, peer tutor. So I was like, I think I got this. So I went back, got my administrative and my special education degree, and I ended up running a special ed department at the school for 10 years. So that was, and my biggest mission with the students was to get them to college, to get them
Mm.
a start, for kids who had disabilities, like making sure that their parents had, the gateway for them to have the opportunities that all students should have, is to get to college. So that's then after that I kind of sort of got bored. I wanted to be a assistant principal, and I had an opportunity to take a position, and I denied it because I'm like, all right, this means that like I'm not really going to have a life because I'm going to be kind of at the mercy of the school. So I kind of decided to take a different route. A cousin of mine, he had a company and I was doing some contract work for him on the side, some 508 work. Um, and he asked me if I was interested in getting into government contracting. Of course, I was like, all right, like what does that entail? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I had no clue what an NDA was. I was clueless, but he seemed to think that I had something in me. So, long story short, I ended up, taking that route and going down the government contracting trail. And that was in 2014 when I started.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey.
So you do quite a few things now, though, right? So how did that come about? So let's start with the events because I've been to some of your events. They're fantastic. Talk about how you started this events space in the event space.
So when I came into government contracting while I was working for this small business, the small business won a contract at CMS, and it was a lot of companies that won a position. And somebody had approached me and was like, Shelley, you should like start getting people together it was kind of like Oasis, like all of these companies want Oasis. It's like pulling all these companies together to have like one big happy hour to
Hmm.
figure out who's on this particular IDIQ, BPA, whatever, GWAC. So that's what I did. Spark was awarded at CMS. I got all the emails of all the companies, 100 and I think like 28 of them. So I started hosting free events to get Spark awardees together so that we could all maybe try to work together. From there, the event started to take off, and I started them really small, and then I started in like the Columbia area, and then they grew to Bethesda, Rockville, Virginia. And out of this, at the time, G2 Exchange came to me, the former owner, David Blackburn, and he was like, Shelley, I'm all into this. Like I want to help you out and try to make this happen and sponsor it. So I got linked up with G2 Exchange. Well, long story short, the company that I was working with at the time was about to sell. So I ended up going out on my own. Like I took the leap of faith and decided to start like doing some consulting work, starting to work for G2 Exchange to build out events with government and government contractors. And then that's where the whole events piece blossomed. That's
Wow.
where it all started.
That's amazing, and it's pretty huge. I go to your site. I see the events. I've attended many of the events. Funnily enough, I stumbled across you accidentally. I think somebody nominated me for some sort of award, and then it's like the gateway drug to learning all about Shelley. Um, and so, talk a bit about Orange Slices because that's part of that mix, right?
That is. So, kind of dating back when G2 Exchange sold the the owner, of course, when you sell something, you kind of go into hiding
Hmm.
and you got to kind of cool off. So, Orange Slices came about back in August of 23, and it was kind of it's of the nature of bringing people together, right? The news, the people, government, industry, just making sure that people have access and pulling together information. So Orange Slices and I grouped up. At the time, I had my own events gig. So in order to bring everybody together, David and I kind of came together and was like, all right, let's try to pull people into the room who need to be there, who are, out there engaging, which is what we were doing, which is what I was doing, still doing with Shelley's events. And it's just become one of these things where you have like I kind of equate us to like a news channel, right? You like a certain news channel, you like a certain weather person, you like
Yeah.
a certain anchor. So it's kind of like that. Like when you come to a Shelley's events or an Orange Slices event, you know what to expect. You're going to get great content, great people in the room, and it's going to be worth your while. and there's always going to be some element of different, whether it be the venue or what we're speaking about, talking about. It's just different. People have told me the energy is different. So that's kind of like where everything began. It was last year, August, September timeframe where I joined back up. And then now, speed up a year, I joined as their chief strategy officer. So, with that hat, I have one. And then the Shelley's events hat, I have one. I got a lot of hats. I got my hands in a lot of things, which is good. It keeps me out of trouble.
Well, that's true, I agree with you. It does seem to be a lot of work. And the orange slices, which I get the emails now, right? You can get on the email list and you get the news of different acquisitions that are happening or opportunities that are out there in the world, which is very interesting. Now, as a government person, it's just informational for me. I'm not bidding on stuff, but I find it very interesting to kind of keep a pulse of what's going on out there. But yet, that's not all you do. You mentioned you are a realtor in Florida. Now, did you just do that as a lark because you just had no other thing to do with your time?
I have nothing else better to do with my time than to do something else. No, it started back, so a long time ago, probably about 20 years ago, my husband and I started investing in real estate back when we got married. So it's just been one of these things that I've just really enjoyed doing, but I never had the time when I lived back in Maryland to get my license. And a friend of mine who left teaching and is very successful in real estate, she was like, Shelley, your network is huge. Like you can like literally people will come to you and ask you, do you know somebody? Do you know somebody? Which is so true. So speed up 20 years coming down here and moving to Florida during COVID, I had a couple of spare moments on my hands. So I decided to take a real estate course, and it was a 7-day course. And I took the test and I passed within 2 weeks of taking the course and everything because I felt like I could help in some way. Because I feel like if I'm coming to Florida, then probably maybe some people might want to come with me. So that's where it ended up kind of developing is the passion for helping people, move or find their next home or their investment. It's really the investment piece versus their home piece because there's a lot of emotions that are involved in finding your home. So I more or less like to deal with the numbers and less less emotions because I don't have a lot of bandwidth to kind of talk it all out. It's down to the numbers and that's what we're doing. So that's why I got my real estate license. Long story short, is because I knew a lot of people were moving and I knew that they would, or if people saw that I lived here, then maybe they would be interested in moving where I'm moving. And I'm coming up on 3 years, and I've referred about 5 homes out of state in all different places for sales. And I have made about 10 sales, which I mean, it's not a lot, but
Sure.
it's like something fun, right? It's something fun to do. And a lot of people who come and want to come to Florida, obviously, are my investors. So they're always like, Shelley, can you find me a deal? And it's pretty much a lot of investors who are within my government contracting community. I
Okay,
mean, who wouldn't want to be a snowbird?
who wouldn't want to be? That's right. We were just talking about before we started recording. You have 60-degree weather and I have 38-degree weather. Of course, I would like to be a snowbird. Absolutely. It'd be nice to be in your weather right now. Oh, and then you
Yeah.
have another business where you do wealth and accounting.
Yes. So a lot of companies, because I was a professor of entrepreneurship, I taught in the high school level, I taught in the college level. Um, there's a lot of people who I know who are making that jump. So you talk about like how you try to kind of either go out on your own to consult or start your own business or, make a transition to some other type of career. I end up having a lot of people in my network who end up coming out of, some kind of situation and they're like, Shelley, I need some help starting my own business. So I'm there to help them in that. My husband is actually an accountant. He's a CPA, a CFP. So he does the finances and the investing. I won't say I'm just, sometimes I do like business development for him. And, I tee him up with some people in industry that are looking for some accounting help, tax help. So that's where like the business first started when it, was created about 11 or 12 years ago. Yeah, it's a lot.
It does sound like a lot. So is that a typical day in the life? Do you have to give each of these entities a slice of your time?
So funny you should mention. So I feel like there's another slice which is like personal. I feel like my personal life has its own,
Yeah.
story. So there's that and then there's that business. But then, yes, so to answer your question, yes, like this morning I was filling out a form for a referral. So, that was 30 minutes or so getting that information together for my real estate side. And then there was like my OrangeSlices side that I probably spent like 2 or 3 hours today. And then there's Shelley's Events side. So yes, thankfully though, my husband runs all of the MSS piece, and once in a while we'll have a discussion on what's happening, kind of for him to spin me up. But I'm kind of like in the background for that one.
But still, it's a hefty thing, right? To run multiple businesses. And so congrats. Amazing that you
Thanks.
were able to do that.
Yes.
Um, is there any kind of tip you would have for somebody for managing your time that way?
So that's a great question. And my advice is number one, knowing your boundaries. Like I honestly, there are some things where I question, I'm like, why am I doing this? So one time there was a time when I was doing a rental car business. And my husband's like, Shelley, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I just want to do something. So, but like it boils down to like time, effort, and what you get out of it. So whether it's, personal passion or money, whatever drives you, I think that's, what's kind of where you have to kind of figure out like, why am I doing the why? Why are you doing this? Um, but sometimes it's a little difficult to manage. But I think that if you compartmentalize, and I'll be real, like I'm always writing a to-do list. I'm all about the paper. I'm all about like a calendar. So it's being organized and surrounding yourself with people that help you. So I have a great team that I work with Shelley's Events. OrangeSlices, I have a fantastic team. Of course, like my husband's company, he's a one-man show, but he does a great job because he handles my books. So it's surrounding yourself with people who are great at what they do, and you stay in your lane with what you're really good at.
That's good advice. So, as you look back over your career and the variety of things that you've tried out, what's something you go, man, I wish it wasn't done that way. I wish there's got to be a better way to do this. And I'm going to caveat and say, whatever that is, uh, we're not going to necessarily come up with the better way, right, today on this conversation. But let's at least hopefully put something out there that others will take advantage of and go, oh, that's a great idea. I can do something about that. So what's something that should be reconsidered?
So career-wise, I think it's number one, finding a mentor. I think that's really number one, and that's really difficult to find, I feel like.
Mm,
And then understanding like how much you need someone like that to kind of like guide you. But that's also too opening yourself up to helping others. So I wish I had some good mentors, don't get me wrong. Like I had fantastic mentors, but it's like you kind of have to gravitate towards them. But the thing that I think I would take back or kind of redo, or I wish there was a better way, and we're not going to solve all the world's problems in this conversation, but I think it's like the internship side of things. Now,
Mm,
like I said to you before, I try, well, I don't think I mentioned this in here, is that I wanted to work for CMS. My parents were both government workers at NSA, 40 years. So I thought that's what I wanted to do with my life. But I couldn't get that particular job because when I went to go try to intern, my GPA wasn't high enough. And it was like that network I didn't have either.
mm,
So going like kind of making it a full circle, like I think it's more or less like trying to engage students in with what we're doing as government contractors and trying to harvest those students to come into this field because it's not a sexy field. Let's be real. It's
yeah.
not sexy at all. Government's not sexy. Contracting is somewhat sexy, but not really. I mean, it's a lot of it's a lot, but I think it's engaging students at a better way instead of just internships, like being that mentor or, getting out there to help. I do a lot of nonprofit work with STEM organizations. So, like engaging with those organizations more as a company to help kind of foster that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, I think I've worked for a number of companies before I became a federal employee, and I can't recall a single contract I worked on where we had interns on the contract, right? Probably because everything has got to be billable. It's a
Yeah.
whole mess when you're on contract. But governments could certainly open the door and say, hey, companies, you should be bringing young people in not only for your business when you get some fresh blood and some and sure you get to spend a lot of time and effort on interns, but also it's another way to expose them to government, right? Because not getting internships at government agencies is hard. It's really hard.
It's very difficult.
And unless you're at a certain university that's got a pathway or already got a programs, or you're on a scholarship program that's government related that gets you in the door, it's really tough, and yet we need young people in government, and we need young people at companies, right? We need growth, we need opportunity, we need new ideas. So I really like that idea of figuring out better ways to get interns, that experience. I'm very fortunate that at the agency I work at, we do have interns. Not every agency I've worked at even had an internship program. My agency does have an internship program, and while I don't get interns, I have been participating in an internal mentorship program where those interns get mentors while they're at the agency, and
Mhm.
they're not even in the same office. Like I work over in IT, and I'm mentoring somebody who works over in HR, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not mentoring them about their HR job. They have people that are helping them with that. I'm talking to them about the broader, how do you build your career? How do you build your network? How do you interact over, in your career? How do you get the best out of it? But this is the first place I've ever been that had something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just say I think CMS like kind of missed out on me.
No, that's true. I mean, that's been a topic of conversation in recent years, not just within government circles, but in business world around, you know, um, reducing the pool of applicants based on GPA
Oh yeah.
considerations, based on college education requirements.
Oh yeah.
I know some states for to become a state employee have removed the college requirement. My daughter experienced this. She decided she didn't want to go the college route. She wanted to go right into the workforce.
Mhm.
And she luckily was able to get networked to meet some people who were willing to waive their college requirement and give her a shot, right? So you're right. There is the opportunity to miss out on great candidates if
Oh
you continue to build a box and say, if you don't fit in this box, we're not interested in you.
yeah, and I feel like you're missing out on some really great, I don't want to say young adults
Yeah,
and really sharp people. And like if I think back to my parents, like they both didn't have a degree and they were recruited out of high school. I mean,
right.
literally, that's what the government did was recruit out of high school. So I don't know. It's and it's becoming harder and harder to find people to work in government and to retain these young people in government. So
Yeah, it
it's
should be interesting. It should be interesting. I know there's a lot of conversation on what the workforce should look like here in the future, and we'll stay away from that. But I agree that no matter what, we need some younger people involved because at a whole in America, we are top heavy retirement age people, right?
oh
And
yeah.
so that means a lot of industries, not just government, are going to need young people to be interested, and we got to find better ways to get them interested.
Correct. Yep. So it's one of those things where you kind of look back and you're like, all right, like my I started here, but like my career has taken a full circle to where I really wanted to be, but I just got there in a different way.
Right. So, Shelley, what's coming up for you here in the new year?
Oh man, the new year is full of new events and what have you. So, government takes a break. I feel like December is like a lot of holiday parties, and then you have January where everybody's trying to get back into the gear. So February is where things kind of kick off for myself and for Orange Slices. So we'll be hosting a lot of events, pretty much probably like every other month around the metro area and really talking about like a couple of different topics, of course, where we met and brought together, where it all started in College Park. In February, we'll have an Engage event, and then we're going to do a little bit of M&A kind of talk because I feel like it's always in everybody's. If you're not in government contracting and thinking about M&A, like not really sure why you're in it. I don't know. I mean, that's what I would be thinking about, like build a business and sell it, right? So kind of taking that to another level, and just like building out some really great events, bringing some really great people together in government and government contracting to share their thoughts and about different industries and topics like AI and of course transformation. And then just kind of seeing what's going to happen and remaining all kinds of positive and hopefully positive change is going to come.
Agreed, agreed. I can't wait to see it. Shelley, thank you so much. I'll put links in the description to Orange Slices and to your events so that people will hopefully participate, especially those of us here in the DC area. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing about your journey.
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate you inviting me.